Welcome back to the Dads and Angels podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, and I'm here with my buddy, Braden Galyen. Braden, tell us your story.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on, first of all. And I guess, my story, it starts back in June of 2017 when my wife, Lacey, and we found out that, we was pregnant with our first child. And it was a surprise to us. So, with that, came that rush of emotions, the excitement, the fear, that am I really, ready for this? Are we ready for this? So, we done the big, the big announcement to our family and friends, and everybody was, everybody was excited for us. I feel like a lot of people was probably waiting for this, since we had gotten married because we've been together for so long. And, in the early, the early parts of it, everything, everything, all the early doctor's appointments was checking out, good like they should. At about 15 weeks, we found out the gender. And, when I found out, that Barron was in fact a boy, I automatically started thinking about all that, father and son stuff that we would be doing together. Yeah.
All that hunting stuff too. Tell us, I already know, but tell us about how you found out the gender.
Well, we went to the early ultrasound and, the 15 week and found out, he was a boy, and Lacey wanted to do a gender reveal. And, it was right around the start of bow season. And so she thought of the idea of filling up a balloon full of blue paint and letting me shoot it with my bow. And, we had all our family and friends over, and, it was just a good time, revealing the gender. And, I say all of that just to show how normal, it was at the beginning. And then, right around the 20-week mark, I was actually at work on a midnight when Lacey texted me, and she said that she was having a pain in her chest and her back, and she was getting real sick with it, throwing up and everything. And I just shook it off, thinking it was the normal pregnancy stuff. And then she told me that her mom was coming to get her to take her to the emergency room because it was getting worse. It wasn't going away. And
how long did that go on before she decided that it might be time to see a doctor?
I think it started early in the evening, and then about early morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, she realized that this was something pretty serious, and that she probably needed to to get to a doctor. And that's when her mom came and got her and took her to the emergency room over in Owensboro, Kentucky, right here close to me. And they ran some tests on her, and then decided to admit her overnight just to keep a watch on her, and keep an eye on her overnight. And we ended up spending 2 days in the hospital there in Owensboro. And, they ran multiple tests on her. And finally, a high-risk pregnancy doctor, came in to talk to us. And he said he feared that she had HELLP syndrome, and was, telling us how dangerous it was for her. And, if left untreated, it could possibly kill her. And, he let us know that, the only way to cure it would be to deliver the baby. And, we was...
So before we go, into the delivery part and everything, can you give us a little bit of background behind HELLP, and as far as maybe even what they told you then and what you did research later?
There in Owensboro, that was pretty early on in the process, so they didn't tell us a lot about HELP. But HELP, it's a acronym for it stands for hemolysis, which is the breakdown of red blood cells, elevated liver enzymes, and low blood platelet count. And basically, it's a severe form of preeclampsia, and it only affects, like, on the research that we've done, it only affects like 1% of all pregnancies, and it's even more rare at 20 weeks, which is what Lacey was. It usually develops, somewhere around the 35 to 37 week mark.
Yeah.
And we kind of became experts on it, through our stay in the hospital, and we pretty much done all the Google research we possibly could.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, and being in the medical field, I mean, we study all these different types of things. Honestly, I had never heard of HELP until you and I got hooked up, but you talk to anybody who's gone through a medical emergency, regardless of what the outcomes are and everything, they become an expert real quick. And you guys had your MDs and HELP syndrome, I'm sure, by the time you were done there. But
yeah, there was actually a time that I had to cut us all off from Google, because there would be times when me and Lacey and her mom would all be Googling stuff, and it scared us more than I think it helped us. So
yeah.
I actually we had to all make a pact to stay off Google for a little bit.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea. I know there's been a few times where I'm like, all right, we just need to shut the phone off for a second because we're freaking ourselves out.
Yeah.
So the doctor told you, all right, this is, Lacey, you've got HELP syndrome. The only way to get rid of it's to deliver, and take it from there, man.
Yeah, he suspected HELP syndrome, the doctor at Owensboro, and he said the only way is to deliver the baby. And of course, us, her being at 20 weeks, we knew that, there was no chance for him to make it. So, I mean, we was, that was some pretty rough news for us right there. He wasn't certain, but it was enough to scare us. And so we spent 2 or 3 days there in Owensboro, and he decided that she needed to be transferred to Norton's Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, because if this was in fact HELP syndrome, then they would be more equipped, to do an early delivery if she was able to make it, a little longer. And they, when we got to Louisville, it was pretty much, that was around October the 17th, I think, and this was like 4 or 5 days after she initially had all the, the pains for the first time, and it was pretty much a up and down roller coaster for the next 7 days. She had all kinds of teams of doctors coming in, because they didn't want to just, when we got there, they just didn't want to say it was HELP. That's what it was looking like, but they wanted to test every other possibility, before delivering Barron. And, like I said, HELP, it is like, it's real with like the blood platelet count and the liver enzymes. That's the real sign of HELP. So they was doing blood tests every 12 hours on her. And, we was getting those numbers every 12 hours the whole time we was there. And, just watching those numbers, extremely closely. We was pretty much living and dying, by those numbers. And they had started her on some steroids to help with her pain and inflammation, because I guess where her liver, her liver was pretty much shutting down on her. And they gave her the steroids to help with all that inflammation, and that actually made, her numbers better.
That gave you a little bit of hope, huh?
Yeah. So, like I said, the roller coaster up and down. One day they would be good, the next day not so good. And, the normal person, their blood platelet count is usually around 200,000. And Lacey's, the lowest it got was, I think, 50,000. And liver enzymes, normal is under 100, and Lacey's was like 200 to 300. So those numbers was getting better with the steroids. But after they had tested, all, the possibilities they could, they decided, her numbers were looking good because of the steroids is what they thought. So they said, let's step her down off these steroids, just to kind of see, how our body reacts. And, that way we can, maybe determine if this is HELLP. And, they started stepping her down, and, she didn't make it 24 hours before she had another episode of pain and sickness. It's like a band of pain around, her back and lower chest.
Yeah.
So after that episode, and after a few more rounds of blood work, the doctor came in, and he said, I'm 99.9% positive this is HELLP syndrome. As rare as it is, for you to be at 20 weeks and have it, he said he was 99.9% positive. And he said that we're going to start, preparing you to deliver. And, knowing, at this point she was 21 weeks, and they had told us, when we got there that we needed to make it to 23 for them to be able to resuscitate Barron once he was born, and for him to be able to stay in the NICU. They said it's just at that, at 20, 21 weeks, they're just too small for the equipment that they have.
Yeah.
And so we started preparing for the delivery on October 23rd. It started with a blood transfusion because, of course, of her low platelet count. They was worried about her bleeding
right
during the delivery. They started all that the night before, and they gave her some pain medicine, and she pretty much passed out. For a while. They wasn't going to start the delivery process until the doctors come back the next morning. So it was pretty much a sleepless night for me, with that sitting on my mind all night.
Yeah, what was going through your mind at that point? Were you thinking, this is game over? Were you thinking maybe there's still some hope? Every time they walk in, what was going through your mind, man?
It really didn't process for me. I had hope all up until they started, the actual delivery process. Actually gave her the medication to start contractions. Until then, I was clinging on to some hope that, all this was just a bad dream, and that, they was just going to come in and say, she's looking better. We're just going to keep her here for, a few more weeks until he's strong enough, and big enough to make it. And, I thought about that the whole night. And, of course there was, some anger in there. Why is this happening to us? 'Cause like I said, at the beginning of the pregnancy, it was just so normal. I just never thought that anything like this could happen to us.
Yeah. You never do.
No.
Yeah. You really never do. And I think that big question of why is, it's outside of that feeling that when everyone finds out, they've lost their kid, the question of why, I think, is the only other commonality that everyone has. Like, why did this happen to us? Why did this happen to me? And I can't even imagine going through, starting at the hospital and having that roller coaster ride back and forth again. That, our stories are so different with that one, because I'm sitting here I'm kind of tearing up a little bit just because I know you guys so well, but I just listen to this right now is just kind of giving me the chills. But
Yeah,
You know,
and
keep going, man. So,
I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. You know, my
yeah,
voice is probably cracking, but yeah, not only, knowing that I'm going to lose my son, still worrying about Lacey's health, and having the chance that something could happen to her as well. And
yeah,
I know it's like that with any birth, but with her situation, with the HELLP, that's even more dangerous.
yeah. There's
Uh,
a legitimate concern with
yeah,
that. You know, everyone thinks that there's the possibility with HELLP with what was going on. So,
but they that morning at about 4 o'clock, they started the medicine to induce labor, and she started contracting, and at about 12:45 on October 24th, our little boy was born at 21 weeks old. He was 9 ounces and 9 inches long, and the nurse, they took him and started to clean him up, and they was still working on Lacey, and she walked over to me and said, "Dad, do you want to hold him?" And that was my first big breakdown there.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
just those words, and I just had to sit down, and I started crying, and I held him, and that's the picture that I sent you that you shared on social media. That
yeah,
Lacey's mom was in there with us, and she snapped that picture there the first time, me getting to hold him, and they finished up on Lacey, and she, then Lacey got to hold him, and the nurse, because he was still actually born. His heart was actually beating when he was born. He had a faint heartbeat, and they thought that he lived for about 23 minutes
oh wow,
after birth. So we got to hold him there, as his heart took its final beat.
yeah, man. Again, I think you're the first person that I've interviewed or even encountered, honestly, before I even started these podcasts, that have gone through a situation where you've felt, your son's last heartbeat. And I mean, put that into words, man. Like, what was it like when it got quiet, when it went silent? Can you remember?
Yeah, it all happened. It seemed like it happened so fast there. But yeah, it's something you can't. I don't think you can really put into words.
Yeah,
Because when he, you could see, because he was so premature. His skin was so thin. You could see his little heart beating.
yeah,
Just plain as day, and to be, just Lacey holding him and me holding her. It's his heart took its last beat. It's I can't really put it into words or into a feeling.
no,
It's
no, I can't. I mean, I think it's almost unfair to ask if you can put that into words, because you just, like, unless you've, that's one of those things, unless you've gone through it, there's no way really there's probably no way to really describe it. Were you guys able to get a bunch? I mean, I know you had sent me the picture of you and Barron. Were you able to take a bunch of pictures? And
yeah, we got several pictures. Like I said, her mom was in there with us through most of it, and she took
Mhm.
quite a few pictures of me and
Okay.
Barron and Lacey and Barron, and then us together. And then the nurse, she actually took several pictures of Barron later. They got him, cleaned up some more and put him in a little outfit and got some more pictures of him for us.
Yeah. Was it the hospital have outfits for him? Did you guys? I guess it was kind of an emergency situation, so you probably didn't have your dad bed packed up and everything.
No, yeah, they had quite a bit of outfits. The staff was great with us. I can't speak to how awesome they was, through a terrible situation. They made it a little bit more bearable.
Yeah. Well, and what was the name of this hospital in Louisville again?
Norton's Hospital.
Norton's. Okay.
We actually,
Yeah.
one of our doctors, he trained under like the number one doctor out there on HELLP syndrome. Just considered the expert in the country on HELLP syndrome, and he actually trained under him.
He knew what was up,
Yeah.
So there wasn't any question in your mind then, huh? With any of the medical advice that you were given,
we was in great hands for sure.
Good. What was it like thinking, like, okay, I mean, at some point in time, you come to terms with my son's not going to make it, and this is before delivery and everything. Once they start the tropins and everything to induce delivery, what was going through your head about Lacey?
About her condition, about how she was going to handle it,
or just if she was. Did it ever cross your mind that I could be, me, Braden, I could be walking out of this hospital by myself?
Yeah.
What was?
Yeah, that crossed my mind several times, and of course, that was my biggest fear. Through it all is losing her as well. Already knowing, that I was gonna, lose my son. That was probably my biggest fear through the whole stay at the hospital. And probably the hardest part is, watching her go through it and the pain she was in, physically.
Yeah. And we kind of sit there thinking like, we would take it all on if we could, but as guys, as dads, we're pretty powerless sometimes when it comes to that. And it's like you don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
You just kind of like look around like, I have no idea whether you have medical training or not. You just like, I don't know what to do right now. I think everyone hits that point.
Yeah, me and you had actually one of the first few times me and you talked, we had actually talked about that helpless feeling. Us, not really being able to do anything, for them.
And I guess a little bit of background. Braden and I got together through our wives. Our wives are from the neighbor, I guess, same county, neighboring towns, and we went through the loss of our son October 4th, and shortly after, Braden and Lacey lost their son through the story that you just heard. And my wife and Lacey, got hooked up through social media again. We're starting to see the positives of social media with some things now through things like this. And I remember turning to my wife and be like, when next time you talk to Lacey, I want Braden's number. And I remember texting you back and forth from work. Honestly, and hopefully my work isn't listening to this. I don't remember paying attention to a damn thing that day, because the only thing I could remember doing was, we were talking about that helpless feeling. But then that conversation turned pretty quick. And all of a sudden we started finding out that, you and I had a whole lot in common. And, to turn the conversation into more recovery and into the part where we're going to smile and laugh a little bit. We started talking about hunting pretty damn quick.
Yeah. That was
after all was said and done.
That was the common ground, between us and that the alone feeling that you get going through, and I know you've experienced it along with, the other dads that have been on the podcast and the ones to come, me and you connecting like that, that it was so good for that alone feeling that you get when you're going through something like this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think Braden, I think you were the first. You and Joe were the first two like big connections that I've made through this whole thing. And I honestly, man, I never really thanked you for that, because there's been times where my shit was falling apart. And I think especially like that midway through all the grieving period where I was at work and I was just breaking down, and I just text you like, dude, I'm having a bad day. And you're a man of few words, but there were some things that you had said to me where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to get through this day and on to the next. And, and we'd go back and forth like that, which has always been really, really cool, man. So I'm glad I got to have the platform of the podcast to thank you on that. So a bunch of people will hear it, hopefully from, Amanda's hometown, Lacey's hometown, your hometown, my adopted hometown down there in Kentucky. But, let's turn it a little bit, man. Let's start talking about, you got home, the dust is, I wouldn't quite say the dust is settled, but when you got home, what took place when you got home immediately, and then kind of going forward?
Yeah, that when we got home, that was probably the hardest part on both of us. Just because in the hospital, everything was so crazy. Like you said, the whole emergency situation, us worried about, Lacey's health.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we got home, that's when the darkness, it really hit, and it hit hard. I don't know if you know or not, Kyle, but I know a lot of people from, my hometown do. I have a history of addiction in my past, and to prescription medication. And, when I got home, like I said, that helpless feeling that we have. And, Lacey, she was dealing with, postpartum depression, and, both of us grieving. I felt like I was drowning. And, alcohol never was my vice. I was always able to, to socially drink. But, when we got home, I was drinking to cope with everything that was going on, which wasn't healthy. It was me reverting back to, the old habits. And, one day, just sitting in our living room, Lacey looked at me. She pretty much said, "Hey, man, you got to get your shit together." And a woman that, going through as much as she is, sit there and says that to me. I feel like I'm 3 foot tall. And we laid there on the floor that night and cried. And, we decided together that, we was gonna get through this. And,
That's awesome.
We decided just to start from there, 1 foot in front of the other, one day at a time, and just try to get some good days under our belt. And, once we would, string together a few days, if we had a bad day, we didn't let that, take us back to square one. We had that bad day and let it go, and, keep going forward. And this is about the time that, you reached out to me, is about the time all that was going on. It couldn't have happened at a more perfect time. So I have to thank you for that.
Yeah. It's the feeling is mutual, man. Cause I think there's a lot of people that are going to go through this and say they do the why me thing, and they turn to alcohol or they turn to drugs. I know Joe talked about, he was a recovering alcoholic, and as well as I know you, Braden, I didn't know that about you with the past that you had. But I guess one thing that I admire, and I really want our listeners to admire, is you took ownership of it, and you said, okay, we're gonna turn this around. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, our wives are Herculean in strength, compared to us, because they're the ones that can turn us around. And it's nice to know I'm not the only one whose wife had to turn him around. But listen to her say, like, you got to get your shit together. I'm glad she said it, man, because because you can share your story. Now I'm sure we got some spring hunting coming up. It's just like there's so much positivity that are coming up once we get snapped out of that, that funk that it's okay to be in for a little bit. But then once you take the ownership of that situation and say, okay, now let's buck up. Let's turn this into a positive. While rambling as that was, I couldn't help but just keep nodding as you were talking about that story. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and that, that's exactly what I was shooting for. Anybody, that's listening to this podcast that has been through something, like we have, or just anybody that's struggling, to just know that there's hope, and you got to take it a day at a time, literally. I know that's a kind of cliche saying, but to take it a day at a time and one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why it stuck around for so long too. So Braden, you guys you've gone through that initial, that you got home, you guys had your issues, you're on the upswing, at least, a little bit. What were you doing at that time for yourself? Like, how were you recovering?
Well, since that time that, Lacey told me I needed to get my shit together, we loved to be in the outdoors, me and her and our dog Ada, so we would just get outside and go on a hike, or, and hunting's, as hunting's a big part, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, deer season. That was right in the middle of deer season that all this was happening. And, me and my dad, we hunt together, all the time. And, he had pretty much already planned on, not having me there this season, just because of everything that was going on. And, I told him, no, I needed to be out there because, that's when I'm out in the woods, that's when I'm at peace. So doing that, exercise again. I know, me and you, we got a lift in when you was here visiting. That it always helps to put myself through pain, I guess. That always helps me. It's a good release. Get my mind clear.
Yeah.
Really, doing this podcast, Kyle, has been a big up for me because, like you said, I'm a man of a few words.
Yeah.
I don't share my feelings a lot. So I mean, this is really something that's out of my comfort zone. But I'm so glad that I get to do it. To not only help my grieving process, but to honor Barron's memory as well.
Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest things that we have with this podcast is it really lets our children kind of like live through how we're going to talk about. And I mean, it seems silly, people way back in the day, they used to write things down, and, you've got the old leather books from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. For us, it may be podcasts, and it's like maybe someday, way down the road, someone's going to listen to this, and it's going to help, and they're going to listen to listen to everyone's stories, listen to your story, Braden, and say, man, that guy went through the ringer too, and but he made it. He walked through the gates of hell, and he's coming out the other end. He's coming out on top. With when to revert back to the HELLP syndrome a little bit, what did the doctors tell you was the possibility of having a child later on? What was what's the prognosis later on?
Well, HELLP reoccurring in later pregnancies for regular women that develop HELLP later on in their pregnancy is somewhere around, I think, 10 to 15%. And they said with Lacey, with her developing it so early, that would be, quite a bit higher, more around like the 30 to 50% range of it happening again. But they said with treatment, starting, as soon as we, whenever we decide to try again, as soon as we got a positive pregnancy test, that they would start treatment right then, and that could probably, decrease the chance, to maybe somewhere around 15 to 20% of it happening again in a future pregnancy.
Gotcha. And then when you talk treatment with this, and even again, being a pharmacist, like I'm thinking like, oh, there's going to be some heavy pharmaceutical treatment with this. What did they tell you she's going to be taking? Like both when she's pregnant, or I guess before you start trying, maybe, and then while she would be pregnant.
They said before, just the regular prenatal vitamins, like 2 months, before we start trying, as well as a low dose aspirin. And then, as soon as we found out, that we got a positive pregnancy test, that they would start on heparin shots. And then, of course, as, she got further along through the pregnancy, somewhere around the 20-week mark, they would probably start her on steroids, to develop the baby in case of a, early delivery.
Gotcha. So when you go to work, Braden, what's it like for you? Are you able to like disconnect at work? Are there people that kind of constantly remind you of stuff that happened, or is it just kind of business as usual? It's a different life. What's that like when you go there?
My work, they've been really good through it all. I had some time off, with Lacey, after everything had happened, that I could just spend with her, at home grieving and helping her out. And they actually, I just took like an FMLA leave, so it's just an unpaid leave. And they had actually all rallied together and raised some money for us, since I was going to be without a check for a little while.
Did they really?
So yeah, they've been great, through it all. But to kind of touch on what you were saying, what we get the most, and like you said, it's kind of your adopted hometown as well. It's a small, tight-knit community, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everything going on. So a lot of people know our story, and when you see people out, they may try to avoid you, or if you talk to them, try to avoid bringing it up, for the fact of not wanting to, to bring up a bad memory or hurt you in some way. And I completely understand it. If tables were turned, I wouldn't know what to say either.
Yeah.
And with me and you talking, there were several times that I had no, idea what to say to you, except that just I was here for you, man. But, me and Lacey, we enjoy talking about Barron, even though it does, bring up some of those painful memories. I've told Lacey, time and time again, I don't know that and I know it won't ever go away, but I don't know that I would want it to, the pain, because then that would mean that Barron was gone, or at least it would feel like it. But we enjoy talking about him, because his memory lives on that way, we feel like, I guess.
Yeah. When, you talk about not wanting to have not gone through it, it seems like it's shaped you quite a bit. To describe yourself before it went on, and tell me kind of how you've grown after it happened? What are the biggest differences you notice within yourself?
Well, I think you just said it there. Is I've grown up. Before, like I touched there at the beginning of my story about, are we really ready for this? As far as being parents, and before I guess I was, just a kid myself, and I probably still act like a kid a lot of the times, but it's matured me, and I've grown not only as as a human being, but as a father and as a husband. Me and Lacey we're closer now than I can ever remember us being since we've gotten together.
Yeah. And you can tell, we, if when in preparation for these podcasts, I granted, I knew you guys well before I even started these things, but you look through and I guess you do your your Facebook creeping a little bit, and you can see, a growth with you guys. And, just like Joe from episode 1, there's a ton of smiles. Like, you guys are on vacation, a bunch of different places, a ton of different smiles. And then you can definitely see that growth in your face, in pictures afterwards. And I'll be honest, Braden, there's not many of you from afterwards, but the ones that there are, it's like there's this maturity, this kind of stoic nature that you carry yourself with. So, even if, well, you see it in yourself, but others see it too. And it's real cool to watch because, we go through a situation that a lot of people don't want to go through. And, once you've gone through it, it's like, okay, what did it, like, I think a solid and really good person will say, well, let's reflect back on what's going on here and just kind of figure out where to go from here. And you're one of the best examples of that, because it's like, okay, we're not going to set these goals where I'm going to do 10 million different things that are maybe unrealistic. You're just like one foot in front of the other. Let's just slow it down. And you can't help but think that, for when you and Lacey try again, and when you guys have, another son or daughter, maybe at the same time, who knows, but you can tell it's already going to make you a better dad. So it's real cool to watch that.
Yeah, we've talked about that amongst ourselves, knowing that, when it does happen again, when we do become parents, well, we already are parents, but, we know that we won't ever take anything for granted, because of what we've been through.
Yeah. Now, when you're just like kind of hanging out by yourself, say you're doing something around the house or you're doing something at work, and you start thinking about Braden, or you start thinking about Barron, how do you, if you start to get kind of like dragged down a little bit, what do you do to kind of bring yourself back up?
Well, usually, because it happens quite a bit, I think about him, on a daily basis, at least, some point of the day or another. And I really just, because the only way I can describe it is, when I think about it, it just feels like somebody punches me right in my gut. And, I just sat there and I let it run its course. And, it just seems like he's always sending us signs, that things are going to be okay. Just like today, I was pacing around the house nervous about this podcast. And it was pouring down rain, and I was afraid about the internet connection. And all of a sudden the sun just popped out, and Lacey was like, I bet there's a rainbow outside right now. And I looked out the back door, and sure enough, a double rainbow, right out our backyard there.
Yeah, and I saw the picture, and I will definitely after we're done recording today, I'm going to put that up on the website. Outside of it being a beautiful, beautiful picture, it certainly is, certainly is a sign that, Barron's up there looking out for you.
And there's a story, there's a longer story behind the, rainbows and Barron, and maybe we can save that for another podcast. But that it was really special today.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes you can have the most expensive camera in the world and take these breathtaking pictures across the world. Sometimes you just look out in your backyard and, you see something like that. And, I guess I got to be a little selfish if it's a double rainbow. I can't help but think Garrett and Barron are kind of, they're hanging out there together, thinking about, kind of looking down on both of us right now, thinking there's no way in hell they would have been friends before this. But I know I always look on the internet for those pictures of the two kids kind of arm in arm to send you. And I haven't been able to find one yet, but as soon as I find that thing, I'm going to send it to you, man. Because there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of both of our sons and how, I can't help but they're hanging out there together right now.
They are.
So and I was, you get sad, you get happy about all these things, but I'm relieved that Garrett and Barron, they're not alone up there. So they've got family and everything, but the thing is they've got that thing that binds them together, just like, their dad's down here. So it's another one of those things you can't really describe too much for anybody to really understand it. But the more, I think about it, I think the only other person that might know is you, man. But I do think about that on a daily basis. And it's one of those things that gets me through when I start thinking about my boy. So, but yeah, so, after when you were preparing for the podcast, man, and you saw the rainbow, were you good? Were you calmed down, or was it the glass of whiskey that helped? Or what was it?
I was still a little nervous, and but I think that was just Barron saying, hey, you got this, and mainly I was nervous because I just wanted to honor him the best I could.
Yeah. Well, I think Braden, I think you did a great job at that today, man. And I'll be honest, I thought this conversation was gonna turn into a lot more hunting and stuff, but I'm glad we were actually able to keep it on track. So, especially after both of us having a glass of whiskey by our side here, and I guess I kind of started this with Bobby on episode 2. And I guess we'll kind of carry it forward here. What kind of whiskey are you drinking on that side?
Maker's Mark.
Makers, nice. We're doing the Buffalo Trace thing over here. So.
Well, I was actually going for that, and they didn't have it, so I had to go with Makers.
See, I got lucky; it was on sale on my side. So, oh man, but Braden, I gotta thank you, man. When I first asked you to be on the podcast, I was like, we got a lot in common, but he's a man of few words. I'm not sure if he's going to want to do it, but I gotta say, I was really all day. I was busting at the seams, ready to get home and get this thing started today. So I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kyle. And hey, you're going to have to get down here and do some turkey hunting with me here next month.
Yeah, I think May we're hopefully coming down in May, so hopefully I can catch a tail end of the season. So one last thing, man. So one of the things that we started, and it's kind of a small thing, but we started a playlist on Spotify, the Dads and Angels playlist, and it's more meant to kind of facilitate some motivation, some creativity, kind of all the things that I kind of do around here. And I just wanted to share some of that music that just kind of gets to get the juices flowing a little bit. Give me a song to throw on there. First one that comes off top of your head.
Let's do Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
There we go.
That was a song that was real special to Lacey, throughout the entire pregnancy. So.
Awesome. I will definitely throw that one on there. So, well, Braden, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you being on the podcast tonight.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for having me. It was fun.
No problem, man. All right, everybody, we're signing off for tonight. We'll see you later.